Some viewers may find this disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
That was not a joke. If you are squeamish, have a fear of pus or blood, or just have trouble forgetting disturbing things, then you might want to scroll down and click to a new tab.
Alright, quick backstory. In 2023, for my 10-year anniversary, I did something groundbreaking. I trash-talked myself and chose my biggest shames and regrets in the decade that I've been an influencer. Or at least, the worst videos that I made representing that. I decided to let it be a humbling experience and actually get some things off my chest. You know, address old follies and set the record straight for some of my grander muck-ups over the years. Of course, when you make a video like that, you're bound to get some curiosity. When are you gonna do the best video's counterpart? To tell you the truth, I was actually planning on making this video a few months after the worst episodes list, and then when that didn't pan out, the 11th anniversary video. However, I didn't do that because talking up my own work has always felt very awkward. It's like laughing at your own jokes, you know? No one really likes that guy. And on top of that, despite my reputation, I am very harsh towards my old work, even if it doesn't seem that way to the public eye. Whether it's my written stories, or my videos here on the platform, or even my choices in life, I tend to see a lot of regrets. The things that I did or didn't do, and the mistakes that were or weren't in my control. What was hilarious one day might be cringe the next, and a whole heaping of OCD doesn't make any of this any easier. However, with that being said, I do have a platform for a reason. You guys are all still around for a reason, and I do thank you for all of that. So I decided that you guys are a better judge of my work than I ever could be. So over the month of February, I had you guys do a vote. Choose some of your favorite videos on this channel that are still up, and we'll make a video out of that. And let me say, the choices that you guys made were certainly enlightening. When I was doing up the tallies, I was surprised how many videos of mine got at least one mention. It was well over 100. Which was a bit of an ego boost. Now, most of them only got 1 or 2 mentions, but I was still floored that someone out there still does fondly remember some of the way back in the day episodes like Minty Christmas or Arthur's Big Hit, or that people really like the videos that I thought didn't make an impact at all, like the Gumball Inquisition review or Dark Gold World. I'm glad that somebody noticed those efforts. That being said, there were plenty of videos that did get a lot of votes, but didn't quite make the list. Unless I'm bad at math and miscounted the tallies, which is always a possibility, and I do apologize if that's the case. And just in that case, before we begin the actual list, I would like to give a brief overview of the episodes that almost made the final list. Or they might have if I'm bad at math. So let's start out with the Star Giant Productions trilogy. It got requested quite a lot for this list, I think for obvious reasons. I'll probably be talking more about Star Giant and everything on my second channel, but I hope you don't mind if I don't want to talk about her in a video like this. I might just put together like a full-on comprehensive information on everything I know about this strange alien being, and have it go on for like 6 or 7 hours straight. But as for now, I would like to put this person just completely out of my mind. If any videos I've ever made could be described as traumatic, these would be it. Homer Badman also got quite a few mentions, especially for its second part. I think that if I made that video today, it would be a little bit different, a little bit more expansive. I want to be clear, I still stand by most of what I said in that video, but that's another one that probably deserves more than just being talked about briefly in a video like this. I'll probably be making a video addressing my most controversial videos at some point. Not my worst videos, but videos like Troll, that are more contentious than outright hated. Quite a few videos in the first 100 Atrocities era got a surprising amount of votes. I did expect Chicken Little to be a candidate, that one is a classic, but the worst Squidward torture episodes was certainly a surprise. I never thought too highly of that video as a video, but I suppose it's not the most unpredictable thing in the world. It is the video that put me on the map. And I'm sure that it is a lot of people's first video of mine. And yes, I did change that title for YouTube purposes, and I apologize. If I had it my way, I would absolutely keep the original title the original way forever. Keep YouTube PG-14, people. Top 25 modern SpongeBob episodes was also probably a way that a lot of people found my channel, although that title is really out of date. Season 5, which most of the entries were from, hasn't been modern in like a decade. But by far, Elf Bowling was the most popular of my first 100 atrocities. And even before I knew that, I was definitely sorry for making it an honorable mention on the worst list. Going over the audio back in 2014, it sounded way too loud and way too abrasive. You know, the reputation that I have for giving Mr. Enter style rants. But it's actually one of the few videos back then that I think I got over the top enough to actually make it work. The only problem with it is that the microphone that I used was really bad. But on re-examination, I am amazed at how well it actually held up, and it's probably number 11 on this list. DW's Very Bad Mood is the video that I'm surprised most didn't make it on the list proper. It was the first time I ever got an editor, and it was the video that made me okay with eventually hiring Rachel, Crimson, and so on. If it wasn't for the fact that Voodoo Raisins just asked if he could give it a shot, I'd probably still be doing all of the editing on this channel myself forever, and that would have been fucking hell. For our more recent venture, I'm glad the 100 cartoons video was at least liked enough to get close to being on this list. I really like how that video came out, as it was an attempt to both survive and thrive in the current YouTube algorithm while doing what I want to do most on this platform. Like, the best part of old YouTube to me was that I could just talk about whatever I wanted. Like, I could review an episode of the Little Shop of Horrors cartoon that you've never heard of before and don't care about when there's not like a remake or whatever going on right now, and I could still get 100,000 views on that video. Personally, I want to talk about shows like Glitch Text, Lloyd in Space, Sam and Max. And while those shows all certainly have their fans, it's much harder to get a mass audience to watch a video review of that kind of stuff, unless your channel is entirely built on that. There is a way to do it, but it's so much riskier these days, and it's hard to afford a risk like the Cadillacs and Dinosaurs video in the modern YouTube ecosystem. The Emoji Movie review and the Core review are a couple of videos that I expected to be here, but Little Clowns of Happy Town was a name that I was also surprised came up like more than once. But looking into it, people really like that one. I mean, to be fair, this is where Awful Be Bad came from, who I have to mention more often because it's been way too long. It's something that I'm slowly realizing in the 2020s. The wider internet complains about running gags like potatoes, can openers, back credit cards, and you absolutely can overdo that. But while it's never the reason that fans are in the game, it's an important aspect as to why. You might call them memes or running gags, but they're more than that. They're important to establishing an overarching identity of, for the lack of a better word, world you're trying to create in your online show. It's something that we don't really have on the internet these days, unless you count, like, the Vine boom, because these millionaires playing hide and seek in their mansions are too afraid to be cringe to actually have a fucking personality. That got negative real quick. Let's get into the good stuff.
Check it out!
This is the Magic Punch. It's really powerful.
Dorbies, everywhere I look I see Dorbies, rolling to and fro I see Dorbies.
So I was browsing YouTube one day back in like 2016, looking for the absolutely most horrendous cartoons or animated movies that I could possibly find. I did that occasionally back in the day, browsing things like TV Trope's So Bad It's Horrible page, or random internet lists of the worst thing ever. That's how I found a lot of shows and such, most prominently Doggy Poo, but Nut Shack, The Boom Crew, Control-Alt-Delete, stuff like that all came from that searching. It's not really a strategy that I can pull off today, because no one cares about Dirt Girl World, no matter how truly awful it is. But in doing this, I came across a channel called Grimy Ghost, who uploaded a video called Balls Just Wanna Grow Up. It was a song, and it actually sounded like a really good song.
I ain't a kid no more. I was when I was 4, but that was long ago.
But it was paired with visuals that were decidedly not. It was just a curiosity that I had to look further into. And luckily for me, the song itself gave a hint as to what this was about.
No Dorby's ever been this far.
The fuck is a Dorby? I looked into it, and no one else seemed to know either. Besides this video, there really wasn't much information about Dorbies back in the day. But I was able to find an MP4 of the actual thing, and it took me down just the most wild rabbit hole. Now, I might sound like really harsh and angry in reviews like this, ranting on the most batshit insane shit there is. You'll see it in Elf Bowling, Invisible Network of Kids, Dork Hunters from Outer Space. But this kind of stuff is actually always my favorite to review. You could call it so bad it's good, but that's not the term that I'd use. It's just, this stuff is incredibly, not just easy to riff on, but really, really fun to riff on. It lets you come up with all sorts of great gags just responding to the batshit insanity that's on screen. Dorbies is the kind of review you can only really make when you're loving what you're doing. And if I could get away with it, like every third animated atrocity type review would be me reviewing something of this caliber. The problem is, getting away with it, which is, not easy. The makers of Dorbies have a more famous work called Gaither's Pond, and plenty of people have asked me to review that in the past, and I actually have been considering it since forever. It's just, everything that I review these days, for better or worse, has to be a calculated risk. Even if you're not in the know of algorithms and all that, I'm sure you're aware that I can't just go animated atrocities Gaither's Pond with no thumbnail and get people to click on it. Which is unfortunate because YouTube titles with random all caps lock words and over-the-top bass thumbnails are way uglier than the Dorbies ever could be. The point is that I have to make sure that I know people will actually see a video before I even decide to make it. Even if the most interesting thing in the world that's actually trending is Moana 2. Once upon a time, no one is talking about this thing was actually a benefit to planning out a video, but those days are sadly long past. I'm probably sounding like a boomer already at this point, but maybe I'm just nostalgic for a better time on the internet. As stupid as this movie thing is, watching even just disparate clips of the whole thing actually does bring me some kind of demented joy. Dorbies is bad, obviously, and on the face of it. It's the only non-video game thing in the world that I've seen that has problems with draw distance. The Dorbies themselves are uncanny. Mary Jane's bow actually clips into her head in some shots. However, the whole thing can just be unintentionally hilarious. Well, maybe unintentional. I wasn't there when they made this. But I don't think that in 1998, a low-budget Christian animation studio would have understood the kind of effect of having someone ramble on and on about nonsense, and then just cut to a clip of a Dorby staring back with a brain-dead expression. If there's something that I'd really like to make more of, it is reviews of this type of media. I'll probably find some kind of strategy that works at some point, because there really is a ton of this nonsense out there that I know would make good and funny reviews that I think can line up with Dorbies, and I'm sure people would love to see that. For example, Academy of Magic is one that I discovered a while back, and it is just the most beautiful mess of an animated film that I have ever seen in my life. I'll probably be making something like suggestion community posts in the coming weeks or months to help direct things towards what you all might want to see, because I have way too many video ideas, and it's hard for me to know what other people want to see. And what other people want to see is what's important for me to chase. On top of that, it's very, very sad to spend a lot of time on no one wants to see. So, you guys ever see Dino Time?
She grounded me.
No, I didn't put a voice over it. The dubbing job in that film is really that bad.
This is the Magic Punch. It'll take you to high places.
In terms of the videos on this list, even the honorable mentions, most of the entries I could predict. I knew that Chicken Little, Dorbies, Homer Badman would all get a few votes and had a chance to be on the list. There weren't really any super curveballs for me that I didn't expect to actually make it on the list. Except this one. So, way back in the day, I made a list of my favorite cartoon theme songs of all time. Unfortunately, it was trapped in copyright purgatory for a decade, to the point where it would have been ridiculous to try and get it free. Especially because music companies are notorious in terms of copyright. I've complained a lot about Fox, Disney, Time Warner. Let me tell ya, ain't no one competes with Warner Chappell and UMG when it comes to flagrant copyright abuses. Right now, in fact, the entire Minecraft community is in a tizzy because of some drama possibly involving the movie, with established YouTubers getting their entire backlogs claimed unreasonably. That's not to say that I was good at editing around copyright issues to begin with way back in 2013. Either way, the more appealing option was to completely remake that video, especially because there were other cartoon theme songs that I had discovered and fell in love with since. And new cartoons with kick-ass theme songs came out afterwards. If there was any project of mine that deserved a remake, it'd be literally everything I've ever done in history, but Top 20 Best Theme Songs was a particularly good candidate. Let's start with the thing that most people noticed. The 2013 list was topped with a theme song from a show called Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and you might have noticed it wasn't on the remake at all. Not even as an honorable mention. People thought that that was a little bit weird, so let me explain. I still think that it's a very good theme song, but my tastes in music were definitely different in 2013. I did want to put it on the honorable mentions list, but I had so many honorable mentions that I limited the segment to a minute, and I wanted to stay focused on theme songs that I didn't give credence to in either list. I'm probably never going to be satisfied with the order on a list like this, or even its conclusions. Like, even if I made that video 2 days later, the order would be entirely different. And there would be different shows on the list. Like, I should have totally found a place for Denver the Last Dinosaur. Chowder's theme song really did grow on me as I watched every single episode of that show. And any of the honorable mentions could have easily slotted themselves in on the right day. I discovered in the last couple of years that I do enjoy talking a lot about music, and for some reason when it comes to music and animation, it's really easy to get me going. Not to say that I'm the most music literate guy out there, but whenever music does get involved with the project, it makes it that much easier. It's one of the reasons that I had a lot of fun making the Wish video, because the soundtrack of that movie is the worst part of it, and it was just so fun to pick apart. However, if I do have any major regrets with top 20 best theme songs, it would be insulting the Chip and Dale movie, which I actually watched later and actually really liked, despite everyone hating it. But that's a discussion for a different day. This is definitely a type of video that I want to do more of, like talking about background music in cartoons, like I took on cartoon titles. That's an idea that I've had for a while. Or maybe even just ranking the songs in various shows or whatever. You know, all Disney songs ranked. Seriously though, throughout this list, I'm probably just going to be spitballing a lot of projects, and if any of them do seem appealing to you, let me know in the comments below. Trust me, it'll be beneficial for the both of us.
Was a cup of good intentions, a tablespoon of one big mess, a dash of overreaction, and I assume you know the rest.
This film takes place less than a year after the September 11th. You guys are hilarious. No, this isn't a troll or a fake out or anything. In 2023, I made a video talking about a lot of my regrets on the platform, and the worst videos that I made in my then 10 years of making videos on the platform. And that video got a surprising amount of votes. So let's talk about it. I'm still in agreement with most of my choices on it. I gave Elf Bowling the movie an honorable mention that I no longer agree with, but other than that, I think the selections are solid. And I do want to be clear, this wasn't an all-encompassing list of every single failure that I had ever done, or every video that I had ever regretted making. There are videos that I made that I do not like that didn't make the list. The Cars 1 video for a more recent example, but there's also Love Loaf, most of the G3 reviews, stuff like that. Fun fact, I actually planned on going through every single video that I had ever done, CinemaSin style, and pointing out every single flaw, any editing flub, any factual error, and so on. I had even done this with the first 30 episodes of Animated Atrocities Season 1. What happened to it? Well, I asked Rebecca to edit the video. I got the file back, and literally the first clip in the entire thing was an editing error. I'm not joking. And yes, if you're wondering, she's probably going to keep getting strays throughout this entire video. I didn't speak much on her before because I didn't want to get dragged into a long-winded drama and give her more of an excuse to bitch about me. But that already happened! And now I'm more focused on making her know that if she ever decides to return, I remember every single thing that she put me and my friends through, and I will come to meet her every single time. Like Sans Undertale, or Guardian from Samurai Jack if you prefer. I still do have the script for that video, and you might see it at some point, but projects like that, like my worst videos, and honestly like the video you're watching right now, kind of fuck with my head. I've said this way too much recently, but as time goes on, I become more and more obsessive compulsive. And whenever I get into reevaluating my past, it kinda leads me to spiral. Watching my review from 2013 is one thing, but I see the mistakes and I start wanting to call them out. Then it grows to me wanting to completely remake that video from the ground up, because I could do better, the original looks like shit, and why the hell did anyone like me in the first place, and it goes on and on and on. It's one of the reasons that I haven't been able to make this video without some viewer input. In even my best works, all I can really see is the flaws. I wouldn't call it perfectionism because, let's be honest, I'm not a perfectionist. It's an issue of focus and troubling bad thoughts. I want to be clear. I am happy that I made this video back in 2023. It was important, and I think there was a ton of things that I needed to address. Hell, there's probably more that I need to address in the future. But I'm not gonna lie and say that I was in the best mental state immediately afterwards. Not to get into those tiny details, but I was looking back at like literally everything that I had ever done in my life, going over it with a fine-toothed comb, and generally just feeling like shit about it. My Wayside review, for example. I think it's one of my best, but the first thing that I think about when I think about it, the only thing I could think of is that I mispronounced the artist Brinklow as Brickenlow. And she wasn't the original artist either. Dennis Hockerman was. And Brinklow never illustrated in the second book. It's a lot of stuff like that that just keeps piling up and up and up. I have a lot of regrets in my life, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. In my worst mental moments, I feel like I've screwed up things irrevocably as my mind gets louder and louder, and makes even the smallest mistakes blow up into horrendous controversies. Like, even now, I feel that I'm being too negative in this video with videos that people really do like and enjoy. And then that's gonna be the whole thing. This is just my own little quirky mind, and I do need to remember that no one is perfect, and no one gets out of this life unscathed.
This is the magic punch. It protects you and makes you run faster.
The world of being an influencer is a strange thing. On one level, we're just guys or girls or whatever making stuff in our bedroom. Or, if we get lucky, making stuff in a set or studio. And just talking our minds about whatever we're thinking, whether it be toys, cartoons, music, or video games. And yet, we tend to have an influence on so many people, whether we realize it or not. And in ways that, like, even, especially, the big Hollywood stars don't. I'm sure each of you has at least one YouTuber or Twitch streamer or whatever that you hold dear as an important part of your formative development. Probably more than just one.
YouTube is made of moments. Moments that can make us laugh. And moments that can change who we are. With so many people already making videos, I just want to see if I can make a moment. Myself. I'll never know if I don't try.
This right here is from a channel called @God. You've never heard of him, but his voice probably sounds familiar. He was the guy who voiced the Minecraft trailer.
I am Steve.
The real one.
Let's go to a place where everything is made of blocks. Where the only limit is your imagination.
The trailer was made by a channel that he frequently acted for called Variety, that has since been discontinued. And the @God Show trailer I find one of the most inspiring things that I've ever seen. YouTube is a magical place. And I say that with no exaggeration or irony or postmodernist sensibility. I mean it straight up. And it's had an indelible effect on not just my life, but the lives of so many other people. A man ranting on the shitty games that sucked ass birthed an entire genre and created so many careers with so many fantastic moments. That was the inspiration of my inspiration for my earliest days. That's fucking sorcery. It might sound cringe or stupid what I'm talking about right now, but here I am listening to a funny Swedish man ranting about video games. No, not that one, the other one.
I have been playing Civilization full time since 2010. Haven't made any money from it, but that's the government's problem.
Yeah, him. Waiting for surgery, terrified out of my mind, and suddenly it becomes okay. Meaning is something that us humans have invented, which means that it's just as valid no matter where it comes from. Captain Sparkles made a parody of a popular song like 13 years ago. I used to rule the world, which introduced me to the original. And Viva La Vida is one of my favorite songs of all time. In December of 2022, after all of this, Captain Sparkles makes a prologue to that video.
Suffered heartaches, but through it all, wish I could find just one more day.
We find meaning in the strangest places.
You know one should be as alone as you try to be. Family trees don't need the organic, the branches you graft are as equally valid.
This is a song by The Stipendium, and it's a commercial for a video game that I have no interest in, and here it's not as good as the game it's a sequel to. And yet, the song they made is one of the best and most important songs that I have ever heard in my life. And I've heard all songs ever. The Stipendium has such a talent, not just for wordplay, but finding these deep themes buried in most people would call just a game.
We make plans, think we know where we're gonna go, but fate's hand deals more than the cards it shows.
The Subnautica song isn't just a Subnautica song. It's a song about life and finding your place in adulthood. And in turn, it makes you feel like Subnautica is more than just a game. Back in the 2000s, that's all video games were to the general public. Time wasters at best, inspirations for mass murder at worst. On one side, we had the Jack Thompsons of the world, taking a huge moral crusade against them. On the other side, we had established media critics like Roger Ebert disagreeing with the very notion that video games could ever be considered art. And I want to state something plainly. There were plenty of games that exuded artistic intention back then, just as there are now. Exploring mental illness in Psychonauts, the solemn environments of Shadow of the Colossus, watching an entire populace coping with mortality in Majora's Mask. But the beginning and ending of the mainstream's understanding of video games was that Mario existed. As a teenager, I really wanted to go into video game design. And because of that, my passions were seen as ridiculous. Until I found this one guy on the internet, Daniel Floyd, doing a college presentation. He wasn't a reviewer or a journalist like most of the gaming channels I followed. He was doing something different. He was actually taking the medium seriously as an artistic medium. Something that even the most passionate online gamers didn't really seem to do. When The Escapist finally gave him and his team a weekly show, I was watching that thing religiously. The Extra Credits series introduced me to a whole array of genres and experiences I could have never imagined trying before, some of which became my favorite and most respected video games of all time. I learned a lot through the series, not just about video games themselves, but a lot of just general writing advice. I can say that I owe a lot of my media literacy to the series. They made not a video game exciting, but video games as a media, as an art form, exciting. And today, so much later, it's like Ozymandias, really. To so much of the internet, to most of the people making response videos to Extra Credits, they're just the stop normalizing Nazis guys. But if it was just a guy making a medically stupid video, then I would have had no interest in making the Extra Credits trilogy videos. These videos were, in a sense, a post-mortem. I was looking for a sense of closure. I wasn't here for a lark, and I didn't make these videos because I was a disgruntled ex-fan. I was genuinely curious. Where did it all go so wrong? It hurts like hell when you see something so important to you break down so much. Extra Credits didn't just mean something to me. At one point in time, it meant everything to me. They bolstered hopes and dreams. And I'd be lying if I said that all of the people just clowning on them was satisfying in any way. Because that video, and I guess the Orcs video too, is just the end of a downward trend. Just talking about them alone ignores them bitching about hatred before it came out, defending loot boxes and other predatory game practices, and so many other things that just got worse and worse. And at this point, I wouldn't even be surprised if they were rambling on about the benefits of NFTs. That's not an accusation. I want to be clear. I don't know if they did that. I haven't watched them since I made the last video. I'm just saying it fits the MO at this point. The actual answer to where it all went wrong probably deserves a full-on documentary. I'll put that on the list of projects I'll get to eventually. But to keep it short, a lot of it does come down to the writer James Portnow, the guy behind the scenes. He left in 2018 due to allegations of workplace harassment, and the whole thing has been spiraling down the toilet bowl ever since. Tackling Extra Credits was something that was definitely a little bit out of my way. Technically, you could argue that Extra Credits is an animation, it's slideshow, but after everything that happened, I felt that someone needed to say something in more of a way than just clowning on their bad takes. And I am glad that the videos were well received. And I get it, it might seem strange that I'm putting so much passion and stock into what is essentially a web series. But you have to remember that even if no one is taking Extra Credits themselves seriously, people are taking their arguments seriously. Like real people with actual pull in certain mediums. Sometime after the third Extra Credits review, Wizards of the Coast created essentially 5.5th edition. Basically saying, yes Extra Credits, you are right in all of this. Everything about your Orcs video is 100% accurate. Orcs can be not strong and super smart and literally an elf, except not called an elf. The discussion for the changes in D&D is a discussion for another day. Also, if you haven't seen the third part, as it was done a little bit later, there's an editing thing in it. It's not a glitch. We did a style thing for some time to prevent copyright matches. While it did work for preventing copyright, at least on the visual front, it did look awkward, so we didn't do it for very long. But Extra Credits 3, Orcs Must Die, is one of the most prominent videos where we actually did that.
This is the magic punch. Use it when you're underwater. I equipped it with an oxygen meter.
Now we're talking. For like the longest time, and I mean like half a decade, Top 20 Worst Theme Songs was my favorite video that I had ever made. Possibly like my favorite thing that I had ever made. Which is weird when you think about it. I mean, when you get down to it, it is just a cartoons list. I'm not the first person to make a video like this, and I'm definitely not going to be the last. But this video was special to me, and it always will be. Top 20 Worst Theme Songs is a culmination of one particular time in my life. You'll notice that this video has a lot of collaborators and a lot of cameos. I wanted this video to be big and special, so back in the day I got all or most of the original Growing Around team to do something here. I'd gotten Voodoo Raisins and Kimberly to voice act before, so I asked them to voice here again. A new twist though is that it also has Bryson's animation. I even asked Kyle to do something for this video, but for better or worse, he never found the time. And I also had them listen to a lot of my candidates for the list, and they threw around their own suggestions. If you're wondering, that's why Rurouni Kenshin ended up on the list at all. A show that apparently I should have known more about. I have heard so much in regards to this video. Like, the weirdest thing, it always boils down to this. You do not get Rurouni Kenshin at all, but you're totally right, the theme song sucks. And you know what, you're probably alright, I know nothing about that show. This video is, in essence, a time capsule for me to a different time in my life. The team that I surrounded myself with at the time has all since gone their own ways. Sometimes it was because we had a falling out, and sometimes because people drift apart. Sometimes it's both, and sometimes it's both but not in that order. I had incompetently managed the project that pulled all of us together, and as that project became less and less likely, they had each more or less moved on with their lives. With the exception of Kyle, which is a long story that I don't want to get into here, I do hope that each and every one of them are doing great with wherever they've ended up in their lives. And I also hope that if they did hear about any of my stumbles, they aren't too disappointed in where I ended up with mine. Pretty much all of my issues have been laid bare for the world to see. My circle is definitely different this day and age, and I certainly wouldn't trade what I have today for the world. But I do hold the back then times very strongly. The ending song was something that Kimberly had introduced me to. I hadn't watched that far in the Pokemon anime myself, but it really does bring me back to those times every time that I hear it. I wish I could have been a lot better myself back then. A much better person, a much more competent person, but my brain worked in stupid ways. Like, here's a fun fact. This was the last video that I made in Windows Movie Maker. Yeah, this video was made in Windows Movie Maker. Beyond its propensity to crash, I literally had to break the software to get some of the effects in that video to work. The credits wasn't an intentional slowdown effect. I literally overloaded the program to force it to lag. Like, I decided that that was going to be the last Movie Maker video I ever did, not because it was a shit editing software, but because I had finally pushed it to its limits and did everything that I possibly could with Windows Movie Maker. That's how my brain worked. I always felt that learning a new editing software would be more effort than trying to make this piece of shit actually do something. And of course, I only properly learned how to use the new editing software I upgraded to in 2024. When I finally learned that I could make things move on the screen. Yeah, the Mongrel video is the one I decided to actually figure out how to use my editing software. I'm not a technical person. I don't know why anyone ever tolerated me.
You see this can opener, Hank? This is also a door opener. Wow.
Number 4 is actually somewhat of a tie. Reanimated and Out of Jimmy's Head. These videos aren't actually quite similar, but they're both about the same source material, and they both got a bunch of votes individually. So I decided to smash them together in one entry to prevent this list from being too redundant. That being said, I do think that they're interesting companion pieces. I think that for all of us, our favorite and not so favorite content creators have two distinct eras. You know, post-movie AVGN versus pre-movie AVGN. post-demo reel nostalgia critic, pre-demo reel nostalgia critic. It's never a perfect separation, but it does tend to be when we divide new whoever from classic whoever. In my mind, Reanimated was the finale of classic Mr. Enter. A lot of things changed like immediately afterwards. This was the video immediately before the Indiegogo. And afterwards, I got real about my internet reputation. Then was Technocracy, Nick Orama. It's been a mess of wild controversy. Not that I was never controversial before 2018. Far from it, but I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a distinct difference in feel from before and after the Reanimated review. Like, even before I started playing more to the algorithm and getting more experimental, a lot of the content in general just did feel different. Not necessarily bad, just not the angry, ranty critic constantly that mostly focused on making fun of cartoons. Reanimated was the grand finale of Season 5 of Animated Atrocities, also known as the best season. I don't think that I've had a more consistent group of just classic videos. Little Clowns of Happy Town, Emoji Movie, Shark Tale. If you've been into me at one point or another, chances are a Season 5 episode is definitely high on your own favorites list. And I capped it off with something that I think is really fantastic.
What happened to you yesterday? You get hit by a train, then you like totally ditch me.
For 30 years, I've gone without lunch. To keep this secret, open it.
Cookie Puss, I will eat your soul.
I just wanted to point out that there is a llama in this scene. I don't know why there is a llama in this scene, but there is a llama in this scene.
Reanimated may just be one of my funniest writing works in terms of review.
Hey!
Mr. Enters.
Bad.
And I've been desperate to recapture something like that whenever I get a little bit out there. Craig does a thing. Jimmy gets pwned by the train. The llama. There's a ton of great moments throughout it. And the review has an energy that I don't think I've been able to capture elsewhere. 150 was a big moment that I wanted to really shine. Fun fact, I had kinda sorta almost died before making this video, so that probably played into my mood. I've told this story before, but a month before this video was posted was actually kind of barren for the channel. I had barely posted anything in the winter of 2018. So here's the story behind that. From late 2016 to early 2018, I had really bad insomnia. I described it as literally forgetting how to fall asleep, and I needed to take Ambien to get some. So in February of 2018, like the day after I uploaded the Fleabag Monkey Face review, my Ambien just stopped working altogether. And for 3 days, not only could I not get to sleep, every time I tried to sleep, I got a panic attack. And somewhere around day 2, I legitimately thought that I was going to die. The breakdown I had then must have been something to behold. This isn't a joke, I was shit-talking koalas at a point because those bastards sleep 18 hours a day and still haven't gone extinct. There's an argument that my brain chemistry might have been legitimately altered during that time. I had to go to the hospital to get a new prescription, you know, after 3 days of this. And of course, the worst part of the entire experience is what was playing in the waiting room, Teen Titans Go. I'm not even joking, Teen Titans Go was playing in the waiting room. I couldn't make it up if I tried. I got a better prescription and was actually able to sleep, and after that experience, I got this whirlwind feeling of euphoria. Like, all was right with the world. I was just generally happier and had an energy that I haven't been able to match since then. The days following the insomnia incident, it was like 73 degrees for 3 days in a Massachusetts February. And both parts of the Reanimated review exude that kind of energy. The triumph of the dark times being over. There's no other way to describe it but euphoric. Obviously that feeling didn't last. A couple of months later, I hired Star Giant. And, let's say that she ruined my life. Am I joking? You know what, who cares at this point? It's a funny reason, so let's go with it. But in some way, shape, or form, after Reanimated, I've been trying to recapture who I was before Reanimated. On to Out of Jimmy's Head, that's one of the more obvious attempts of me doing so. Like, it's the same source material, so hopefully it's gonna have a lot of the same energy. And you know what? I think that I came pretty damn close. The Out of Jimmy's Head review is really funny. With the movie, there's a ton to mock and make fun of. The show is like that, but it has a worse budget, with worse writing, and mostly worse acting, with the exception of Jimmy's dad. He plays an irredeemable fucking asshole very well, I must say. This isn't shade to the actors, by the way. Even with, like, Jean-Luc Picard, Out of Jimmy's Head would have been a train wreck. No one could save it. The comedy of the video is greatly enhanced by Sarah, who has a very special style of editing that really does manage to make a lot of my weird sense of humor work. and this is definitely one of his best editing jobs on my channel, outside of the more serious, dramatic work like SpongeBob Season 4 retrospective. What makes this review stick out for most people, I think, was the live action segments. It's one of the few times that I went all in on live action gags. The only other time I really did this was with the Honest Apple review, and I had a lot of people ask me why I haven't done this more. After all, live action footage actually does make my job a whole lot easier, since I don't have to edit audio separately and I could just drag and drop the clips in the timeline. 2 reasons. Number 1, it's hard to memorize a lot of lines or read a script without making it seem like you're reading a script. Like, you can easily tell that I'm just reading all of this off a screen off to the side, right? The other reason that I haven't done so many of these is that I've been very camera shy. That came down to my 2 front teeth being broken. They had been broken since about 2015, I think, and you can see that in pretty much all the times that I did do things in live action. It's something that I was very insecure and kind of sensitive about. There are very few pictures of me between that time and the time that I got them fixed in 2024. That reminds me, you should be seeing the Glenn Martin video by the end of March as a thank you for helping me pay for the recovery for my dental issues. I do like a lot of the gags in Out of Jimmy's Head a lot more than the gags in Reanimated, like the ducks. So you're probably wondering what that's about. There's this inside thing with one of my friends, Ava, who has this thing about rubber ducks and sends them to me occasionally, and I thought it'd be fun to use them in a video. If you guys didn't notice, at the start I say, every episode finds a new way to duck me off, not fuck duck. Then there's a quack sound effect, and in every live action bit we see more and more ducks. She later sent me a giant duck, which probably would have been a fun thing to build up to, but oh well. The final gag is great enough too. The characters that live in my brain wanted me to tell you that they'd never ever make me do anything that might humiliate me. Shut up. Fun fact, I was actually facing out the window during that shot. But the voices in my head do want to thank you for watching the videos and enjoying the gags that they have come up with that I take credit for, as to not appear like a crazy person. And if you're wondering, they don't mind that I get all the credit for their work. What are you talking about? You said you didn't mind. Now they're all gonna think that I'm a liar and a crazy person.
McGoogles is me name. I like a swampy bog. It's time to play a game with your favorite Highland frog.
You ever come across a piece of media that just fascinates you? And I don't mean that in a good way either. I've had this habit where I come across a piece of art that uses a wonderful idea and just bombs it horrifically. High Guardian Spice has been quite an obsession for me for a while now. Unlike most of what I review, it actually does kind of get under my skin. And it's weird because this is a thing that probably should have just popped up and vanished and no one would have cared about it. It was announced in 2018 for 2019, being delayed to like 2021, and I reviewed it from 2023 into 2024. In terms of a business strategy, going for a full episode-by-episode review series of High Guardian Spice was probably not the smartest decision, because as a lot of the commentators pointed out, who still cares about this now? I care a lot about High Guardian Spice, and I'm probably gonna keep talking about this show for the rest of my goddamn life. High Guardian Spice is actually probably my favorite bad cartoon ever. And I don't mean it's the bad cartoon that I like the most or that I tolerate the most. Because I want to be clear, I don't like the show. At all. Even its debatably good episodes, I don't like. I think High Guardian Spice is awful. Poorly animated with terrible characters, and its messaging can be described as misguided. At its best, High Guardian Spice is cringe. At its worst, High Guardian Spice is downright offensive. However, some of its decisions are fascinating. The writing can feel like a game of round robin in a 4th grade classroom. Its world building is inconsistent. It doesn't understand anything about fantasy, weapons, or the English language. But as I watch it and as I review it, I'm just continually thinking, this shit could have worked. There's a potential with fantasy and science fiction that really could have given the benefit to the messages and the storytelling that they were trying to give. In the first video, I went on and on and on about a giant and asking questions about that giant. And believe it or not, that wasn't exactly a joke. Because answering those questions not only builds a stronger world, but it gets more into the themes that I think the show wanted to talk about. Themes of diversity. In a fantasy world, different peoples all come together and try to connect and coexist. And you can have all sorts of great stories figuring out how does a city accommodate a giant or a fairy or a centaur? What stereotypes or conflicts do these varied peoples have to fight against? Instead of doing any and all of that, the show just plays into stereotypes. Dwarven forge, elven bow. High Guardian Spice is one of the most stereotypical fantasy series that I've ever seen, and that's really, really, really sad. For an example, you want to tell stories involving gender and gender identity. You have a dwarf right there. I mean, whether it be Tolkien or Pratchett, dwarves tend to have certain traits associated with them that you could easily tap into. Let me put it this way. High Guardian Spice had the opportunity of exploring the implications of a race of people that doesn't see gender as a thing at all. High Guardian Spice has this sandbox that it just doesn't want to play with. Most infamously, the Hallway of Infinite Adventures that's never touched, completely brushed off, and completely avoided. We have Halloween in a world with transformation magic that no one takes advantage of, if even just for the night. I've said it before, but the saddest thing in the world is missed opportunity. And I feel a lot about this series that I did about Flip-Flopped, or some of the other things that my friends hear me complain about, like Ball and Wonderworld, Danganronpa V3, or the earlier seasons of Legend of Korra. And I'd be lying if I said that High Guardian Spice didn't inspire me to pick up the pencil where the author put it down. I am such a nerd. One of my latest pet projects is called Potential Energy, where it's about this girl whose world is becoming a lot more magical. The rule in that world is that magic attracts magic. So when some small things start appearing, more and more magical creatures and more effects of magical creatures appear more and more in a relatively modern world. And much of the series is the people reacting in their own ways. Some people are understanding, some people aren't, and some people are just confused. But after I made my friends watch this with me, we actually had like our own D&D campaign involving something like the premise, and we did call it High Guardian Spite. Hyperfixation is one of my few traits that I can never seem to beat, but even with that being said, I only get one this strong every few years. And I am really glad that people enjoyed hearing me rant about this for literally hours, because I could talk about High Guardian Spice for many hours more. I'm also glad that people didn't think I was doing it to just be an anti-woke grifter or some shit like that. I'll be talking more about like culture stuff towards the end of this video, but like, it doesn't matter what side anyone is on, it's just all so exhausting and it's just all miserable. No, when you talk about media, good or bad, you should be having some kind of fun, you know? That's my philosophy.
I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
I'm really glad that my favorite review made the list, even if it's not number one on the fan-voted list. So, 2020 was the most miserable year of my life. The most miserable year of most of our lives, I think. And it'll be hard-pressed to find another one that's worse. Knock on wood. I had frustrations with everything back in 2020, and a lot of that was channeled in very bad directions. I talked a lot about that on the worst videos list, obviously. I did a lot of complaining and a lot of other shit that I just regret. Just getting angrier and angrier. Or in some cases, falling in despair. I needed something special. Something important, as a reminder to myself. In our downtimes, I think that we all do need something like this. The Lion King 2019 review has a plot, which is rare for a video like mine. In this video, I'm talking to myself at both 8 and at 18. At the time, I was 28, each separated by 10 years in very different stages of life. Now, this isn't a new idea by any stretch of the imagination. It was inspired by the Nostalgia Critic's original finale, the Scooby-Doo review, which in turn was inspired by the finale of Star Trek The Next Generation. However, I would call it more than inspiration. Actually, I think it's technically called illusion. For better or worse, the Nostalgia Critic did inspire me to make a review show, which changed my life. Before I started this whole crazy adventure, I was so withdrawn I couldn't talk to people at all. I couldn't even really walk down to the store without feeling anxious. The scars my stepfather left on me before he left pressed down hard on me. But I got on the internet and slowly, I do want to not understate slowly, I broke out of my shell. I had gone from someone who had no prospects in anything to someone who actually had a path to making something of himself. Even if what I'm doing here isn't some grand spectacle, it's more than nothing. Referencing the original inspiration was very important for a review like this. Of course, you can't just take something wholesale. So here's the twist upon this long string of influence. The twist of the video itself, if you haven't seen it, there is no future me. I am future me. I don't speak to me at 38 or 48 or an old man. Instead, in the final act of the video, I talk to the in-between of the now and the past. And I think that there is what really makes this video something special. The final message is that the future isn't predetermined, and we could do anything with it. As a kid, I really did like The Lion King. It was the first film that I had ever seen in theaters. You know, I had coloring books, probably one of the tapes I watched on repeat. Lion King 2019, my mother took me to see it as a birthday present. And let's just say it wasn't a great present. The Lion King 2019 is a symbol in and of itself. The shit that is now. Cultural degradation and the present not being as good as the past. In dark times, it's easy to feel like all things are shit, and they're going to be shit forever, and that the good times are gone and buried. There's a juxtaposition from a happy past to a depressing now, but it really is a matter of perspective. Life is full of ups and downs, and we can draw our reference points from anywhere. Even if I was more miserable at 28 than I was at 8, I certainly wasn't more miserable at 28 than I was at 18. I've been asked how accurate the past selves were to how I really was at those time periods. As an 8-year-old kid, I do want to say that I was fairly shy, more shy than I portrayed, but I was a pretty happy-go-lucky kid. I didn't have too many concerns, and the stuff that I liked, I really did like. I probably never would have talked to a stranger, but that's the biggest difference there. As for 18, during my teenage years, I was not a happy person. Freshman year of high school was the first time I had ever hit depression. It was winter depression, so it went away with the coming spring. I thought I was in the clear. But sophomore year, it came back, and it hit me doubly hard, and it kinda kneecapped any hope that I had that this was escapable. It's one thing to be put in a bad, harsh time. It's another thing to escape it and then be thrust back in. And it was so bad, I did consider the end. Especially because my family life was breaking down something fierce at the time. It really was only the tiniest bits of salvation that really did help me cling on. Like, it might not sound like much, but my dog was a big thing to me at the time. And by the end of sophomore year, I had joined a games club and was introduced to Dungeons & Dragons, which gave me even the smallest thing to look forward to. I mean, I say small, but it really is a matter of perspective. Nothing that helps you move on or tolerate your life at the present is small. I can tell you that as a fact.
And I'm gonna be making some macaroni and cheese. It's where we're gonna be eating. We're gonna be eating well tonight. Wait a minute, that's not mac and cheese at all. I have been duped.
Before we move on to the finale, let me go over a couple of videos that I'm actually really surprised didn't make the list. Stuff that I certainly would have put in my own personal top 10 Mr. Enter videos. Starting with the SpongeBob Season 4 retrospective. That's probably the biggest surprise not being here. Sarah did a phenomenal job with the editing, and I think that it really resonated with people in just the right way. We probably will be doing more videos like this at some point. I know that it's really popular, which is why it's so surprising that it didn't get too many votes. The Legend of Zelda cartoon review is my favorite of Coda's editing efforts, if you're wondering. The Zelda cartoon was fun and easy to make fun of, and I love showing off how much of a Zelda nerd I am. That's a quirky bit of fun, and I think that we all had fun with it. Speaking of which, the Zelda NES review, it was a bit of a weird choice, but I really do have a passion for this series. And I did want to do all of the Zelda games in order, give them all reviews. And I still might. The problem is, I cannot, for the life of me, beat Zelda 2. I'm not even kidding. I gave myself like 24 hours to try and get through the game, and I just couldn't do it. Also, I died by jumping into a pit immediately after beating the dragon boss, and because I had to fight him again, I didn't want to, and I rage quit, and I haven't picked up the game since, because I have way more important things to do with my time. Let's see, there's The Wayside, Legend of Korra, and Invisible Network of Kids review. Oh, and Totally Busted. All of them were just classics from that one golden era. The Honest Apple review. That was the last review of my 20s, and I wanted to go all out for the insane decade of my life that my 20s were. I literally bought costumes. Wearing that collar is still one of the most uncomfortable things that I have ever done for a review. And I went all in on the wild and wacky gags. I just wanted to do something super special there. The Boss Baby review. It's the most recent video that technically qualifies for this list, so maybe my opinion will grow harsher with time, but the amount of time and effort it took me to put that thing together is going to be forever burned into my soul. And as a result, I do think that it is a fantastic video. Scarlet and Summer are some of my favorite characters that I have ever added to the show. Also, it's Scarlet with 2 T's. She gets annoyed when you only use 1 T. Explaining monsters versus aliens. Look, I don't care what anyone says. My April Fool's video about Douglas McDougal trying to praise Monsters vs. Aliens like it's some cinematic masterpiece is one of my favorite things that I have ever done. I'll probably be doing a real animated atrocity style video on Monsters vs. Aliens at some point because it is an awful movie, but it will not surpass the Douglas McDougal version, I can promise you that. And if you're wondering, Douglas McDougal will certainly be back. He'll probably hit Monsters vs. Aliens 2 when that guy who stole Rebecca's Indiegogo money actually finishes financing it. Speaking of which, Coda's re-edit of Certifiable Super Sitter, because this was Rebecca's favorite review, and now the original is not publicly viewable, and there is a much better version of her best work that the public can see. The Facade playthrough. This technically doesn't count, but it's still one of my favorite videos ever. On my gameplay channel, I was going through all of the 1001 video games that you must play before you die, which is a whole discussion on its own. One episode was Facade, and because I hate that game so much, I just turned it into an hour of making fun of the game. Like, for one playthrough, I just pretended to be dying while the characters in the game ignored me completely. It was hilarious. The Wish review. I had a lot of fun making this one. Fun fact, I didn't know how to end the review, so I just kinda stopped the video. I turned it into a joke regarding the mushrooms, which seemed to work out. At least no one noticed that I just stopped the video. This list of honorable mentions could go on forever, but the last video that I do want to give a mention to is the Anywhere But Here video. One of my least favorite messages of all time in cartoons was, don't be in a hurry to grow up, because it always delves into, adulthood sucks, and when you turn 18, your life is over, kid. And let's just say, it didn't do great things to the psyche of little kid me. Also, would it be funny if I said this video, it was one of my favorites of all time too?
Look what I've got, a new gadget. Check it out.
This is the Magic Punch. It's the Magic Punch.
And number one, by a wide margin, like it wasn't even close, it probably got more votes than the previous entries combined, was the thing that is most unlike anything else on this channel. Anything else on any cartoon reviewer's channel. Technocracy. This was an 8-part documentary series that I made in 2019, going over my concerns and fears of the way that social media as a whole was going. There were 8 episodes total. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Google, payment processors, digital storefronts, and social credit. It's well known as one of the best things that I've ever done, even by some of my most die-hard detractors. Even when my reputation is on fire, technocracy is the one thing that people often at least tolerate. And to this day, a lot of people ask me about a potential technocracy too. Would you believe that I actually have a lot of mixed feelings on the original technocracy? Don't get me wrong, I still stand by what I said. I believe that the facts within are largely accurate, and they're good documentaries for what they are. It's just one of those projects that I think is most affected by me seeing the errors in everything that I do. Time is a funny thing, and technocracy was essentially trying to hit a moving target that, if I knew was a moving target, I didn't care was a moving target. Social media develops and changes a lot. It's baked into the nature of what social media actually is. Any social media that doesn't change, dies. Just looking at the Twitter episode, for example, you can probably see the problem that I'm referring to. Twitter is simply not the same website that I was talking about in 2019. Clearly. Like, it's not even officially called Twitter anymore. I'm still gonna call it Twitter, but it's officially not Twitter. With Elon Musk's takeover and the entire change around the platform, it's clear that within the video I'm talking about the past. Sort of. My thesis and my warning within the video does hold true. If you don't remember, in the pre-pandemic era, the social media sites were banning a lot of right-wing stuff. Not even just the crazy stuff, but like bog standard, whatever, boring Republican talking points. And the defense that left-wingers always said was, it's a private company, it can do what it wants. Now that private company is in the hand of fake gamer girl Elon Musk, and a salute that the ADL ran defense for. It's a different world, and time moves a lot. Google searches no longer mark when a website is a paid sponsorship, and alongside that, there is so many paid sponsorship slots at the top of the Google search. At this point, you actually have to scroll down like half a page to actually get a real search result. Even beyond that, so many people have tried engaging in search engine optimization that search engines are unusable. YouTube had dislikes visible back in 2019. They said they were removed to prevent hate brigades and to protect the mental health of its users. As someone who has suffered from a hate brigade after dislikes were removed, I can objectively say someone is full of bullshit. In 2019, AI wasn't a thing. Well, it technically was a thing, but it wasn't a thing to this extent. And Tumblr was... Well, okay, some things don't change, but you get the point. A technocracy that I made in 2025 would be a world different than a technocracy made in 2019. And that's only after a scant 6 years have passed. And every time technocracy is the subject of discussion, I can feel all of the corrections, all of the updates that need to be made. You know, there's this thing called TikTok that probably should have gotten an episode because maybe it's Chinese spyware, or maybe it's banned and doesn't exist anymore. Or maybe it just exists sometimes because it's in a nebulous quantum state. Missing out on Twitch and Reddit episodes were also another regret. Reddit is completely broken as a site. It has a problem where very few moderators have a say in like thousands of subreddits, and those subreddits tend to reflect the moderator's own personal beliefs. Reddit's ranking system makes it incredibly easy to ideologically capture any subreddit by disappearing any and all disagreement, even in subreddits that should be apolitical like r/pics. And when that happens, disinformation just goes crazy. Stories rise to the top of Reddit that have a tendency to just be flat out untrue. And if you're calling me right wing for pointing this out, Reddit hurts the left wing a hell of a lot more than it hurts the right wing. Reddit makes the left wing much more unhinged, much more uninformed, and in many cases, complacent, because it lies and tricks them into thinking that they're winning when public opinion is completely against them. Meanwhile, Twitch is the only website that doesn't even hide its double standards when it comes to banning certain things and tolerating others. In fact, I was so disgusted by Twitch that I actually left it a long time ago. I could go on, but I think you get the point. Within technocracy, there's a feeling of helplessness. These videos were made out of a sense of fear and panic for where the social media landscape was heading. And I thought that maybe, just maybe, if there was a warning, something positive could have been done. You're a better judge than me at this. Are things better online now? I was panicking and obsessing about the shit that's propagated now, way back when. And it was foolhardy to expect that little old me could actually change anything in the long run. But you know, I was kind of sort of an optimist at one point. I watched videos from like 2010. Minecraft Let's Plays that don't have ADHD editing. Or watching a channel awesome alum scream at a television show and just wonder how we got here. Hey, Google Gemini, I'm feeling kinda down. How do I fix this? Alright, Golden Gate Bridge. The world definitely does need a technocracy too, with everything that's changed. And maybe we will talk about that in the near future. In the present, I just want to have some optimism first, at the direction that things are going. And maybe there will be optimism. Honestly, if I had to make a prediction here or now, and maybe this is complete stupidity, I think that a lot of people are going to desire to go back, as in spend more time offline. We'll probably never be at the point where it's just check your email and log off ever again. Obviously, that ship has sailed. But I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to be in their own small little communities and doing more things that don't directly involve tweeting 24/7 or doom scrolling through TikTok or Reddit. Kinda like we did in the early 2000s. As content gets shittier and shittier, it will have less of a hold on people, making the algorithms weaker and causing the system to break. It might be hard to believe, but technocracy was actually scary for me to make back in the day. And I don't mean in a conspiratorial Google's gonna get me kind of sense. In 2019, the internet was becoming like noticeably more hostile than it had in the years previous. The internet was obviously always somewhat hostile, and there were always crazies and hate brigades. But 2019, I can pinpoint as the exact year where it felt like, if you disagree with me that this rock isn't the greatest thing ever, I will hunt you down, murder you, and accuse of you of setting the Bastille on fire. And everyone I know will join me in doing that. While that was going on, throughout technocracy, I had to make some pretty ballsy statements. And in some way, talk about and defend absolutely reprehensible people. The Jones guy is the obvious one. I want to make it clear. That man is either insane or very, very good at playing insane and deluding people, and you should never take a single thing that he ever says very seriously. I can believe that, and I can also simultaneously believe that every platform removing him all at once was a coordinated action that shouldn't have been done. Because doing shit like that makes these crazies stronger, and it makes them more justified in their own head and in their followers' heads. I could go over every single person that I mentioned specifically how I feel about them, but that would make this video far more bloated than it already is. But there is 2 people specifically that I think that I have to mention, because my knowledge on them has changed a lot, and time has changed my opinion on them a lot. And I have this desperate need to wash my hands of these people completely. The first is Monkey Jones. If you don't remember, Monkey Jones was an edgy content creator who made videos on the evil Mr. Rogers, and his channel was randomly terminated with no appeal. That was what was known about him in early 2019. Since then, he did things that I cannot abide by. He blasted my book on a live stream. No. Let's talk about Mumkey's girlfriend. This woman he was having an affair with drew sexual images of underage furries. This woman also had a 15-year-old boyfriend, despite being 21. Let me quote Wikitubia directly on this. Adding to the flames of controversy, on July 8th, Mumkey announced that he was engaged to Lou. However, this took some convincing, as before the engagement, he made Lou decide between him and the 15-year-old. This soured Mumkey's relationship with his brother, who expressed his frustrations on Twitter. The next few days were arduous for Mumkey, as Lou proved that he couldn't fix her. Mumkey soon left her with money and sent her back to New York, ending their relationship. A day later, a sex tape was leaked. I want to be clear, none of this has anything to do with him getting banned on YouTube. But this is not the kind of guy that you go to bat for, and I have no sympathy for him and what he's done with his life. Let me put it this way. There are a ton of other people that YouTube has unjustifiably banned, and Monkey Jones should not be the one carrying the banner for them. The other person that I desperately have to write off is Tim Pool. Back before the pandemic, he did a lot of exposés on the stuff that was going on in social media. And to be fair, when he got the chance, he did ask the right questions and interviewed the right people. However, in my own personal do not sue me opinion, ever since the pandemic, I personally believe that he has become completely unhinged. Or maybe, in my own personal don't sue me opinion, he was always this way and just really good at hiding it. In my own personal opinion, I believe that Tim Pool is very transphobic. And in my personal opinion, I believe that Tim Pool spends way too much time talking and bitching about trans people on Twitter. In my personal opinion, I believe that he seems to be absolutely obsessed that a civil war will break out in the next couple of years. And from what I can observe, he has believed that for over half a decade now. I believe that at some point, when you predict something so many times in so many ways and you never relent about it, it feels like it's something that you actually want to happen. Because if it doesn't happen, then you're a crazy person. Objectively, if I made a supercut of this guy saying Civil War, it would be over 24 hours long, and I am not exaggerating. In my personal don't sue me opinion, I believe that Tim Pool got really unhinged over the course of the pandemic, and he appeared to be engaging regular working Joes to disobey protocols, assuming that that would do anything except get the regular Joes arrested. Also, fun fact, Tim Pool was working for a company that was allegedly a front for a Russian influence operation. Now, it's alleged that he didn't know the company was a front. However, in my don't sue me opinion, I believe that it makes a statement if a foreign entity is paying you at all, whether or not that you do know that they are paying you. Also, there's a third person that I want to wash my hands of. He's not relevant to technocracy at all, but I want to renounce anything positive that I've said about Shadversity, who turned into a right-wing culture war outrage grifter who is only made unique by also being an AI shill. Actually, speaking of all of this, I did have an idea of going over the quote-unquote culture war. That was actually another idea for a documentary in itself, like Technocracy, because it is a complicated mess that I want to make sense of, and I do believe that it is very interesting, if nothing else. It's a web of many strings, and someday you might actually see that if I decide to go completely crazy. But here's what you need to know right now. Left-wing idiot Destiny had sex with right-wing idiot Lauren Southern because the culture war is a game designed to manipulate you specifically to keep you angry and distracted at your neighbors instead of the rich idiots poisoning our society. Sorry that this video ended so heavily, but like I said, Technocracy being the best thing I've ever done was pretty unanimous. But if you guys really do want me to go through this whole rigmarole again and give you a Technocracy too, we'll talk about it. It won't be fun or pleasant, but I appreciate you guys, so it's all up to you. We will see as time goes on.